Good morning, Tony. Thanks so much for joining me for this very casual interview today. As I was explaining, we're really excited to hear a little bit more about how things have been going for you in terms of maybe some specific advertisers or some specific wins that you've been having recently while being able to utilize the materials that RDI has either created for you or some of the materials that you have available on your portal. We're just trying to hone in on how you're attacking some of these specific challenges that you're getting. So first, I just wanted to ask you, can you give me a general idea of maybe some of the most common challenges that come up when you're trying to either get a renewal or pitch new business? What are some of the things that you're really up against that seem to be pretty prevalent for you?
Well, first, thanks for having me. Do appreciate this opportunity to chat with you and talk about how RDI is very helpful in my day-to-day work life. But as far as it's kind of funny because I feel like far as renewals go, it's almost one of those where as long as you're doing what's expected and they're getting results, I feel like not that renewals are easy, but obviously you've already got them. So just make sure that you take care of them and deliver results. But it's also helpful to your point to back that up with, just ongoing conversations and ask them if they need anything or if they're it's kind of funny because I feel like they just trust that that what I've provided them up front is true because that's kind of to your point. It all starts out when you're prospecting and trying to win over a new client. It's all about the positioning, and so that's where it's. The challenge is, they've never. When I go to media monitors and I notice that they are advertising with every other radio station in the market but me, then that's where I say, okay, well, there's a reason. And maybe they've never talked to somebody from Radio One, or maybe they've never, they just don't even know who we are, which God forbid. But that's when I, rely on RDI because it's like, okay, now I have to really position because I can't just, these days you can't just call and say, hey, I'm Tony with Radio One. Can we meet? They're just going to say, everyone's so busy. They're just going to blow me off. But first of all,
Yep.
good luck getting someone live. And second of all,
Exactly.
good luck getting, when you do get their voicemail, their email, good luck getting them to call you back. So where I think RDI, especially from my point, when I'm prospecting, it's very valuable because number one, what I think first of all, the information that's provided, obviously, that's very compelling because that gives me a strong case to gain a meeting or gain a phone call. But number two, one of the other things that I like is that it's very succinct. I don't think people have time to read a 68-page, proposal these days. I mean, it's one of the nicest things about working with you guys is when it's just a one sheet or two sheets, and it's like, okay, this is gonna, and I don't know why that excites me so much, but it does because I get that and I go, oh my gosh, this is right to the point, and that's what people want these days. They don't want to. I mean, it's like the days of having a 3 meeting close are over. Like it's almost like you got to close them when you meet them. And
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
it's maybe not that drastic, but it's like you don't, time is of the essence. That's kind of what it boils down to. So long-winded answer. The challenge is it's definitely has changed. I've been doing this for almost 9 years now, and it's changed so much over the course of that 9 years that it's, there's no the days of us. You got to do the CNA and almost the CNA and the pitch all in one, and it's like I hate to say that because I don't like to rush things, but at the same time, that's where I think it's nice to have the information all in one sheet, I can get right to the point and fire it over and kind of just summarize it in a paragraph or two. And then I get on the phone with them and walk through it, and it's very easy to understand. And it happened with a client or a prospect, I should say. I haven't closed him yet, but I've been working on them since the spring, and you guys were a huge factor in that because they are they're doing TV, they're doing radio, they're doing billboards, they're doing so much. And I just finally said, you're not speaking to my audience whatsoever because I'm the only, urban answer in town, and you guys aren't talking to them. And when I positioned it the way that you guys were allowed me to do it, with my knowledge and then your guys' stats and numbers to back it up. I mean, the guy came back and said, well, he said his words were, the interest is very genuine. We just have already spent our money for 2024. So let's look forward to 2025. So guess what? I've been, poking them every month, just say, hey, 2025 is coming up. So let's talk. And so, but yeah, sorry, I know that was a very long-winded answer, but
no, this is perfect, Tony. No, that's exactly what I was really getting at. I wanted to hear about sort of what it's like for you. This whole idea of getting a play-by-play, if you will, as to going out. And like you said, the renewals are a little bit easier because you've sort of already like, hey, you're in the door, you've shown them, if they're seeing the results, everything's
right.
good. But prospecting for this new business, and particularly like you just mentioned with that client that doesn't necessarily think maybe radio in general, they don't think is important. They're not advertising at all on the radio. They're brand new. So
Right.
showing, I think I wanted to ask you too about if you've ever gotten any like feedback as far as the ease and the how people or advertisers, when they're receiving these presentations, are they understanding what this data means? Do we do a good job telling the stories to make it so that even somebody who's not familiar with radio advertising or this Nielsen information, they get it? Or do you have ever people come back to you and say, well, what does this mean? Well, can you explain more? How are we doing as far as making stuff, like you said it's efficient, but like understandable for the general, person?
Oh no, you guys knocked it out of the park in that regard, because let's just say that I've never had anyone, in my experience over time, I've had people question what I've sent them, but never from you guys. Does that make sense? Like, I've sent
Yep.
them materials where they're like, help me understand this. I don't know what I'm looking at. And that's just like, I can't really get into specifics, but I know that's happened over the years, but never from a one sheet that's come from you, because of the fact that I think you guys just do such a phenomenal job of, I hate to use this term, but dumbing it down. I mean, and that's
Yep,
just
no,
kind of what it is,
right.
though. It's like you gotta approach it as if you're sending this to someone that's never seen that before. So why would you, if I don't understand the laws of physics and you send me a sheet that explains all these theories, and if you're just going to send that to me, and I'm probably just not even going to read it, because I'm going to say I don't even know what I'm looking at. So what's the point?
Yep.
But when you dumb it down and make it very simple when you make it very understandable and easy to read, then that's why there's no questions, because I send that to them. I call them. I say, any questions? No. It's like, actually, it's all right there. Thank you for spelling it out and making it very simple, because that's the easiest. You put it in terms that almost anyone can understand. Then you're gonna, that's a win. Right there off the bat, right out of the gate is a win, because of the fact that, again, and this is kind of funny, on a side note, like, I make fun of my manager because he sends 3-page emails. I say, Dan, I said,
Yeah.
don't do that. I said, you
Nope,
lost
nope.
me. I skimmed it. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have time for this. Like, but if you send me one that's broken out, like maybe double spaced and broken out, and okay, this will only take me about a few minutes. Similar to what you guys do with these one sheets, it's like you got it all. I like how you do it in like category, like here, up here, and then down here, and then here. It's almost like it's blocked.
Yep.
And this portion of the audience, you're getting, this percentage or these numbers, this portion, this portion spends this, this, and it's like, so what else do you need? And then, obviously you back it up with the footnote or whatever, and it's like, hey, this is fact. I'm just not just throwing numbers at you. Like, these are factual numbers. And so anyways, yeah, it just makes my job easier for sure.
That's awesome to hear. That's exactly what, we strive for, like you said, about the efficiency and also making things user friendly, because we don't necessarily know. Also, I don't know, you may have times where you're sending things to an agency, which is different than when you're sending something to a direct advertiser, because agencies work with this stuff day in and day out.
Correct.
They're very versed in what index means and all these numbers and things. So that's different than when you're sending it to somebody who, like I said, maybe has never been on the radio before, doesn't understand the value of this data. So you really have to kind of come at it from a different angle. One other thing I wanted to ask you about is some of our other materials, because I know I've worked with you as far as CSPs and a lot of the requests that you've done. Has there ever been an instance, and it's fine if not, but I'm just wondering, that you've used one of our other materials, for instance, like a mini pitch, some of the things that are on your C-Spots page, like the buyer's guide, anything else to either that you've actually just sent part of it directly or use it as like inspiration to then go ahead and submit a request? Has it ever started somewhere else besides just the organic request?
Yes, to answer your question, yes, over the course of time, yeah, I'm trying, if I sat here long enough, I could probably cite a specific example, but I can definitely tell you, I've utilized every tool that you offer over the last, over the course of the last 9 years, and probably just recently, I can't specifically think of anything, but the buyer's guide, yes, for sure, because and the is that the like I say, the Excel sheet that breaks it down per,
Balance by. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
there's balance by, and then so balance by is in Excel, and then prospector is another one that we also do
Prospector,
that's in
yes.
Excel. Yep.
Prospector for
Yep.
sure, because that's, I mean, I've just, screen grabbed a lot of that stuff and just and used that, and that's just even what I like to do with that stuff is not even necessarily when I'm prospecting. It's just like maybe an existing client that I say, hey, check this out, and then just send them a
Just to
little,
send a little
yeah,
blurb, not even a full
right,
presentation, but hey, I just happened to notice. Yeah,
yeah,
something that's really cool about that material about Prospector is
yeah,
that you can not so that particular one you can look at not only how you guys are doing compared to the market, right? We show you and we highlight where you're over indexing by, I think it's 25% or higher.
yeah,
But you can also see then where you're how the competitors are doing. And I know that that's a little interesting for you guys because Dan had told me that you guys don't actually, you're in a sort of a lucky situation, if you will, where you don't have that many direct format competitors, right? Or hardly any. Is that
right,
true?
yeah, yeah, that's correct, yeah,
So
yeah, and
it's
it's,
sort of, but you're still, I'm sure there's still been times with, like you just said, where you've got an advertiser who's on a bunch of other radio stations, not necessarily the urban format, but other formats, but they either don't know anything about you or they don't think they need your stations, right? Until you have, and then
yeah.
you have to prove otherwise why, no, this is, you do. Here's why.
Well, and the funny thing is, so yeah, to Dan's point, like what we do, we use that the opposite, where it's like, okay, we don't have a lot of competition, but you guys are duplicating so much. Like that's kind of one of my positions is, okay, I'm seeing what stations you're buying in the market, and your duplication rate is through the roof. Like, so why do that? It's instead of duplicating, hitting the same audience that many times in a month or 2 months over in a quarter or whatever, take 13%, 15% of that and put it over on my stations, which you're not reaching, which you're not talking to. And, that's a brand new audience that represents growth. So why would you, instead of just, just spending the same money in different areas, but you're hitting the same audience, like that's why we use that to our advantage to say there's no duplication with our audience, period, end of story. Like we're the only one in the market that has this audience. I mean, it's a fact. I mean, you just look at the numbers, so to that point. But I love Prospector. I used to use, probably got to get back to using that more because I used to use it a lot more than I
Fantastic.
do
It
now.
really
And
is.
it's a great tool for sure to have in the arsenal. So
Well, we'll be excited. I know you'll be excited when you get another. And then the great thing about it is we update it, with all the new data, and you can sort of look. Something that's fun to do is look back at maybe some of the older ones and see how things have changed. And yeah, that's a great one too. I wanted to ask you as far as going forward because you talked a little bit about 2025, and not having to give specifics, but are there any like in your arsenal right now, are there any things coming up as far as new business that you're prospecting on or that you're thinking about that you already have plans in your head to say, I want to utilize RDI. Here's what the next steps are going to be for this, and here's what I'm planning to do to be able to close this business.
So yes, and here it goes back to sometimes, as the sales cycle is a lot longer than other sales cycles. Now, I mean, I should say the sales cycle in this industry varies. We'll just go with that. There's sometimes I close somebody in a week. Sometimes it takes a year and a half. It's just amazing how, and it just depends on the industry, right? Depending on if it's a government agency, they tend to take a little bit longer. If it's direct, they tend to not take as long. So, but to your point, I've actually got a lot. I still have several things that you guys put together for me in 2024 that I'm using right now because this is when people are planning for 2025, and so it's a matter of I've got the VA is a big one for me. Like I've got several. I work with 3 different VA. Like one's the Cincinnati VA, one's the Northeast Ohio VA, and then another one is Warren County. I just heard from Butler County VA. They've chosen another route, but Warren County VA, they're another organization that I'm should be meeting. I was unfortunately there was 2 meetings that were canceled, and it was just because something came up that was out of his control. But he wants to meet this month because he wants to hit the ground running in November, and so it's like, okay, it's October 15th, so hey, got to get that meeting going. But anyways, but it's all of the materials were provided by you for him, like that I showed him to get the meeting. I mean, I basically provided him all the materials that I had requested through C-Spots, sent it to him, and he said, yeah, he said, this is great stuff. Let's meet. I really want to use you guys because we've never worked together before, and he's using other outlets. He's using other, number one, other radio stations. Number two, he's a big believer in digital as well. So it's like it's going to be an integrated approach, and so I'm looking forward to that pitch. And that all started. I think it's in C-Spots right now. Warren County Veterans. It's just like when I showed him that information, he was, it's just one of those eye-opening situations that he had never seen that before. So that really helped solidify that meeting. And then Ortho Cincy, which is in the healthcare industry, orthopedics.
Hmm?
They're the one that I mentioned earlier. They I don't know if I mentioned them by name, but they're one that expressed genuine interest. And right now she said they are planning for 2025. So it's a matter of, being able to provide that information to her. And that's the reason I'm even in the conversation right now. And so they look at that info because you can tell they're very numbers. They're just numbers oriented people. I mean, they look at the stats, they look at the their research. I guess we'll just call them research based decisions. So if I can,
that's good for you. That's good for us and good for you. That's perfect.
What I mean.
If
when I was able
care
to provide
about the
that,
research, that's awesome. Yeah.
Because without that, then it's just me, telling them they have to trust me and believe me, and I'm it's almost like you're just grasping at straws when you don't have the numbers to back you up. So. But,
I mean, too, in this environment, as you sort of said, like all these categories are so different, and something that we try to pride ourselves on too, especially with like the mini pitches, is we throw in other national research. We don't generally include a lot of that unless specifically asked for in the CSP presentation, because those are very tailored and based, like I said, to a specific advertiser. But the mini pitches, which are more generalized to these categories, but yet they include your specific market's data. So not all of our mini pitches look the same, even though we do them for all the Radio 1 markets. We've been throwing in other sources like Mintel, we're using other resources in addition to Nielsen to show some of these stories that are more broad, and also we can show them more like on a specific audience, whether it's the Black audience, the Hispanic audience, multicultural in general. We can show a chart just to give a little taste too of what's going on a more national scale and in the bigger picture. So we hope that you guys like that too.
That's important for organizations like the VA because they want to know what's working in other markets. I mean, that's huge for them because they only know what they know, and then they sit there and think, okay, if they're this, I don't know if it's one of those, because a lot of their efforts are not just like, everyone's recruiting. Everyone has to recruit at some point in time. Like so there's times where I talk to them, they say they need help. They need people like volunteers, or they need just employees, whatever. But then they also need, veterans. They need people to sign up. And so it's like, and they asked me, are you working with any other VAs in any other markets? And it's like, well, I'm not personally, but I can get you information. It's like,
yeah.
And that's where you guys come in. It's like, hey, what's working, or can you show me some numbers, and then the numbers might lead to, oh wow, how come Cleveland is doing so well, or how come Philadelphia? And then it's like, then you might be able to they might be able to just pick up the phone and call that market and say, hey, this is Jim from Cincinnati. What can you tell me what you guys do differently or whatever? And so it's just, and then they're at the end of the day, they're going to come back and thank me and you, indirectly, that, hey, thanks for that information that really helped me, move the needle. So
there are definitely times when, like you said, the working with other markets, and I know you guys specifically in Ohio, work together a lot with
Yeah.
your Cleveland and Columbus, because it's,
Right.
you guys have a lot of buys that are like national, right? So you have
Yeah.
some advertisers that are in common. And that helps us
Absolutely.
too, because sometimes we can go back and say, oh, wasn't this was submitted by a different market, but let's see what we did then, but let's also, maybe we got some feedback from it. This is why we love you guys doing the C spots feedback. And I know, like you said, it sometimes you have something that's still pending, and it's like, seems like it's been a while. That's just the
Yeah.
way that it goes.
Sometimes
But
that's
when
how
you
it
do
goes.
get, yeah, I mean, when you do get the outcomes, we love you guys reporting them, because that's how we can get the feedback and see
Right.
what's working and what's not, and then tailor that for our efforts. This has been so helpful, Tony. I really appreciate your time this morning. I know we're
Absolutely.
at the end of our meeting, and
Okay.
I'll let you go about your way and enjoy the rest of your day. I'm sure you have a lot more business to close.